Coaches across the country used the Coachpad this past season to be more efficient with their scout card prep on the weekends as well as when out on the practice field working with their scout teams. Whether you're a coach using a computer program to create cards or drawing them by hand, the Coachpad is for you. Never printing paper or stuffing a binder, clearly seeing scout cards outdoors in the bright sun, and using the coach pad on game days, syncing diagrams from the press box to the sideline were some of the features coaches enjoyed this season. This offseason, get your coach pad at thecoachpad.com to get your program ready for next season. Thecoachpad.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have the head strength and conditioning coach at Veterans Memorial High School down there in my favorite city, San Antonio, Texas. Coach Elton Crochran, also known as just Coach Croc. Coach, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good, Coach. I mean, again, we were just talking briefly, and I know the weather isn't as exciting for you today as it should be, but it still is. I'm checking real quick, probably about 25 degrees warmer where you're at than I am, so can't be too all bad.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's start with, how did you end up as the head strength coach at Veteran Memorial?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started off playing college football at Abilene Christian University. Got to give them a shout out. Go Wildcats. Played football there for 4 years, graduated, didn't really know what I wanted to do in my life. Ended up going to grad school out here at Texas State. And that's when I started interning as a strength and conditioning intern for the football strength staff there. And then from there, I learned, about certifications, grad assistant positions, paid internships, and just started pursuing those opportunities and ended up getting a grad assistant position after a year at UTSA at Hardin-Simmons and got my master's degree from there in kinesiology. Spent 2 summers at IMG Academy working with, various athletes, the football team, track athletes, international tennis players, like from all over the world. And then I moved to West Virginia. So I love beautiful Huntington, Bradenton, Florida, where I could go to the beach like 10, 15 minutes away from where I was living at, to Huntington, West Virginia, where, it was snowing the first week of October. And so I was out there for about a year working with pretty much everybody except for football and baseball. So I was working with, men's, women's soccer, cheerleading, swim and dive, men's, women's basketball. So not necessarily working with football, but definitely sharpening my sword by working with other athletes. After about a year there, I ended up moving back to San Antonio, where I was working at University Incarnate Word, working with football strength staff, and then I was in charge of men's and women's golf. Spent about 6, 7 months there and took the head job at Texas A&M in Kingsville, where I was pretty much over every sport and 2 graduate assistants. So I was there for a year before getting let go, transitioning to high school, and this is going on my 4th year in the high school level. Started off doing, middle school PE, middle school football, assisting with varsity football, and then doing powerlifting. And then my next stop when we moved back to San Antonio, I was pretty much doing all middle school sports, football, basketball, and track before taking over all the strength and conditioning at one of the smaller 3A schools here in San Antonio. And then they just so happened to create a position within the district. And so there's 3, one 6A high school and 2 5A high schools. So the 6A has about 3,000 students. And then the other 5A school in our district has about 2,300 students. And then we have about 1,700 students. And so fairly large high schools in the inner city of San Antonio. And they hired 3 full-time strength and conditioning coaches. And so we're the only district in San Antonio that has full-time strength coaches. We don't teach. We don't coach any other sports. We just do strength and conditioning. And so we're very fortunate with the position and the layout. And, our district right now, we have 5 periods a day. So we have, 75-minute and 90-minute periods throughout the day that we can train our athletes. And so very fortunate to be at a school district like Judson ISD and to be at Veterans Memorial High School here in San Antonio. Very fortunate, the other 2 guys, Coach Jeremy Walden, Coach Howard Jackson, the 2 guys in the district, just guys that I bounce ideas and stuff off of. We go through similar deals because we have the same class schedule and time breakdown and demographic of athletes. And our school is what we call school of choice, and so our kids can choose whatever high school they want to go to within the district, regardless of what middle school they attended. So we go through a lot of the same challenges and everything. So I'm definitely appreciative of those two guys. And this is going on my second year. I took this job April of 2022. And so this is going on about a year and a half for me, almost 2 years come April. And it's going great so far. Just trying to break bad habits, create and build a culture of training. I tell the kids, like, we don't come in here and lift weights. We train, like, we're trying to, get y'all in shape, get y'all ready for camp and practice, and that'll get you ready for games. And so it's layered and it's scaffolded in a way that, you have to do step one before you can go to two and two to three and so on and so forth. And so it's going pretty good right now. We're on Christmas break, thank God. Got about 2.5 weeks off. And so, between going through football season, going to the second round of the playoffs, last year we went to the third round of the playoffs. And so a little bit disappointing, but, being when you lose talent and stuff, it's hard to replicate the same level of success. And so able to take football through, off season, I guess a postseason, if you may, just trying to load them up, hit them with different variations of things, so that way I can kind of set the table for off-season 2024. So that's where I'm at right now in a nutshell. I don't want to break the record for the world's longest bio, so that's where we stand today.
Well, I think you're good, coach. I mean, he didn't do a bio, but he did tell a story. I think the longest intro I've had was Hal Mummy when he did like a 15-minute story to start. So
Yeah.
you're not the longest. You're good there. It's fine. Like I said, I don't like just short answers. It's kind of boring when I just get 5-word answers. So I curiosity, because I know every sport's different. I've talked to a variety of strength coaches over the years. What is your favorite non-football sport? Every sport's got a different personality, obviously. Their kids have different
Yeah.
personalities. But non-football, which one's your favorite to kind of work with?
It would be between volleyball and volleyball would probably be 1A, and then 1B would probably be a tie between softball and girls track. Um, from the girls side, at least, just because it's just different culturally. And then when you have those groups that love to train, it's like telling football, like, hey, we got voluntary 6 a.m. lift tomorrow, and 95% of your team shows up. Like, that's a different type of lift than if you're lifting during the period where guys are already at school and they're kind of forced to do it.
Yeah.
So if you get that right group of athletes, and typically it's your sports like your volleyball and your softball, they're a rah-rah sport. Like, they chant and stuff and have celebrations throughout the game. So naturally they're inclined to have a little more juice than other sports. And then with track is one of those like result you know testing oriented type sports where, hey, if you're not hitting your numbers, then you're not going to hit your mark, and if you don't hit your mark, then you're not going to place, or you're not going to win or be successful. So it's kind of like, hey, I may not like the weight room, but I know that my strength and power is directly tied to my performance. So if I don't do it, then I'm not going to get stronger and more powerful. Therefore, I'm not going to be able to jump as far as I want, or throw, or sprint. So I like track and field from that like business. Typically, they're like, hey, what we got to do, let's get it so we can get in and out. Volleyball is kind of more personality, and softball, same thing. I mean, you're talking about softball, they're outside, they're in the dirt, they're sliding, they go outside with white pants, they come back inside with like red or brown pants, like, so you can be a little more upbeat, I guess you can say. Whereas like some sports, like, the cliche, your tennis and your golf, it's kind of like you gotta be a little more quiet, a little more reserved, because you might startle them a little bit, and so I'd probably say volleyball, because every volleyball program I work with, they've gotten after it in the weight room, and they've seen the results correlate where they're not getting hurt and they're jumping higher. Which, if you're a volleyball player and I can help you stay healthy and jump higher, like, you're gonna be pretty successful throughout the season. So, and then men's sports, Man, it just depends on the culture. I mean, I've been a part of, I was at Marshall, I worked with men's golf, and those dudes were like trying to deadlift 500-600 pounds, like wanting to get after it, right? And so like that's a team that I want to work with. Guys that are like, Coach, what we got today? Hey, where the belts at? Like I'm trying to hit a PR because we got heavy singles today. Like I've had golf teams like that. I've had in Marshall again cheerleading, right? I train them like I would football. I mean, they tumble, right? They got to hold
They're
other
a
human
different level
beings
of
above their
skill.
head.
Like good
Yeah,
programs, they're different.
yeah, for sure. And this one, we had like a full cheerleading program. Like we had a separate program for the Flyers, separate program for the Bays. The base appreciated like the upper mobility and the overhead pressing because like when they have to hold that 110-pound girl above their head, like they don't want to be only able to lift 115 pounds. Like they want to be strong. And so I've had programs like that that you wouldn't traditionally think are like teams that want to come in and get after it. And then I've had teams where, it felt like punishment. I've had a boys basketball team in the past where they felt like they were being punished by coming into the weight room. And then they leave, and then girls soccer is like about to run them over to get into the weight room so they can get their lift in. So it's like it just varies, personality. I think I have a higher winning percentage working with the volleyball and the softball girls track than I do with some of the other teams. Because then the other thing is too is like, with the girls side, they're often neglected and forgotten about. Unless you have like a stud girls program, there's a lot of people that are just kind of like, oh yeah, I think there's a girls basketball game going on today. And it's like, girls and boys, at least in Texas, they play on the same day, like Tuesdays and Fridays. So like, if the boys are playing at home on Tuesday, that means the girls are playing away. And like, some people have no clue that they even have a girls basketball program. So when you offer strength and conditioning to, you know, underserved programs like your girls athletics, typically like the buy-in is almost instant. Um, I have a personality about myself, so I'll match like the sassiness, so they appreciate that, just going back and forth and just getting them motivated. And so those are probably my top teams. Like I said, boys side, they're a little finicky, but like girls, I know like volleyball and softball are typically gonna
Yeah.
be geeked up to be in there.
Well, you mentioned cheerleading there. Like, so when I was at my prior school, our head cheer coach, her daughter cheered at Ohio State, and
Hmm.
like she would talk to us about their workout programs, and it's like, I mean, it's high competitive. They're expected to do a lot.
Yeah.
Like, and that's and that's one of the things I hate about high school athletics to a point is the misunderstanding of the weight room and a lot of
Hmm.
sports that aren't football or baseball or and really your main sports don't understand the importance of the weight room. Like I tell
Yeah.
people all the time, like bowling and like golf programs have weight programs. Like y'all need to understand, like it's
Hmm.
not just your like contact sports that have weight programs. Like you want to be a better athlete, you want to do more. I mean, you're going to be in the weight room. Like, I mean, that's it's same
Yeah.
when your golf kids want to deadlift 500 pounds. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool to be honest. Like, get
For
that kind
sure.
of like so. Um, I mean, like we'll probably hit on a variety of topics today, depending on how long we go. But one of the things I wanted to hit on with you because I saw it on Twitter and I've seen another coach do something similar before in person, but I never got to
Hmm.
ask about it. Is kind of your pregame football because I am under the belief that, and this is part of me being so into feed the cats as I am, is I
Hmm.
hate the old static pregame stretching, being outside for an hour and a half before the game, and just
Yeah.
getting going out there just to do what you've always done. And then I think I don't even know how long ago you tweeted out something about your pregame. I think you guys were in the playoffs at the time, and how you were just doing stuff different, wasn't static. I mean, there was video of you. Actually, as I'm talking about it, I'm scrolling down looking for it. Like your kids
Yeah.
moving, you appreciate your head coach for allowing you to do stuff different. Do you kind of want to talk about what you do pregame? Because I think that's a very interesting, different perspective. And I also think that's if for a school that doesn't necessarily have a reliable strength department or knowledge, it's a way to
Hmm.
change the dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first, I want to give a shout out. to our boys coordinator, Coach Bobby Irvin, and also our girls coordinator, Janelle Mulkey. Both of those two people, they give me the ball and they get out of my way. They let me do my thing. They let me cook. And so Coach Irvin, the head football coach, since I've been in, he was like, hey, this is how we've done things. What do you think? What do you like to do? And from the get-go, he said publicly in front of the staff, like, hey, I'm not knowledgeable about strength and conditioning. Coach Croc is. That's why he's here. Right. Coach Croc is the head strength coach. He's knowledgeable. He's experienced. I believe in him. That's why we hired him. So, let him do his thing. And I don't say never because I don't want to jinx, but like, I have yet to have a problem where a coach is like, we're not doing this program, like just kind of like rebelling against what I'm doing. Everybody's, for the most part, just kind of falling in line and just kind of went with the program. And everybody, from what I've seen, has enjoyed it and reaped the benefits of having a strength and conditioning program year round. And so when it came to the football warm up, it just bothered me to just see the kids go through the motion, because I have this strong belief that your injuries typically come at the beginning of the game, or late in the game, right? Beginning of the game, that can be attributed to not being warmed up, not being activated, things like that. End of the game could be more fatigue, but it's rare that you see that Achilles tear, right before halftime, right middle of the game, or right out of the third quarter. It's typically like fourth quarter, or maybe it's early in the game, like Aaron Rodgers or somebody like that, right? First play. And so, and I could be wrong, but your injuries can be attributed, depending on the time of the game, to certain things. And so when I would see the kids just go through our warm up, I already had this belief that if your team goes outside and just static stretches before a football game, we're putting 50 up on you. Like we're beating you by 50, because you're not going to prepare your kids to be successful by, old school YMCA, everybody legs apart, down to the right, ready, clap, go down to the right, hold it, everybody up, down to the left, ready. Like, if you're doing that pregame, I believe my team is going to run you out of the stadium, right? And so we would do dynamic stuff, and the thought process was, hey, the kids are sitting on the bus, whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's 90 minutes, they're sitting on a bus, and they haven't moved. They haven't moved since, let's see here, we don't have morning practices on Friday during the period. So you're talking about the Thursday before a game from 5 to 6 p.m., the kids are moving. From the time they finish and come off the field at 6 p.m. on a Thursday until you get to the stadium, those kids have not moved. Like, their heart rate hasn't increased above their resting heart rate. They haven't contracted their muscles outside of like standing and sitting. So it's like these kids haven't moved for well over, almost 24 hours. And so what we would do is we would always bring the kids out, and I would take them. He'd give me 10 minutes to warm them up. And depending on how long the drive is, sometimes he'd say, hey, give them a little more, right? Let's say we were playing somewhere that's almost 2 hours away. I might get like 12 minutes instead of 10. Or let's say we're playing at home and it's real warm outside and, nice overcast. We might get 8, right? But I normally had on average about 10 minutes to warm the kids up and do whatever I felt like was necessary. And so last year in 2022 was my first season, and it went good, but I just started kind of picking up things because, first year on the job, you don't want to come and just, rip up everything and just start doing everything different. You want to kind of take some old things that they did that were good and, maybe tweak them a little bit. And so I went with the flow, and, the second year I knew I wanted to do something different. And so I think it was like during the scrimmage, and we were warming up, and he's like, hey, you got about 6 minutes, get them warmed, and then we're rolling. I'm like, all right, cool. So we're going through, a kind of an up-tempo warm-up, and guys are just not moving. Like, we're doing, straight leg kicks where they're supposed to be swinging their foot up to their opposite hand, or some people call them Frankensteins, and they're not even swinging their leg up high enough to kick their hand. Or, we're doing what we call tall side slides, which is just like a lateral shuffle where they swing their arms down below their waist and then up above their head. I got guys not even getting their arms up above their head. So it's like, if we're doing a warm up and guys aren't warming up, then we're wasting our time. And so I sat down with the coach, and it's something that it's always been in the back of my mind. I know years and years ago at Oregon, they used to do, fast Fridays, and, the thought process was like, hey, we don't want to go into the game after like a slow walk through, whatever. We want to go in like, with our hearts racing up tempo. So we would do Fast Fridays, and we did them at UIW, where basically Friday is like, hey, we're going to put shoulder pads on and we're going to practice and we're going to thud and we're going to move around and fly around the field. And, we're going to go in and we're going to get a concentric heavy lift. So we're catching cleans, but we're not catching them at the bottom, and we're doing mobility and we're doing all these other things where we're basically exciting like the central nervous system and priming the body to go out and perform at a high level in the next 24 hours. Well, if you're doing that on a Friday, then you're prepping the body that Saturday. And so it's just a cultivation of all these different things that I've seen in the past and that other programs have done. And I said to myself, why not do some type of circuit where you're essentially forcing the kids to go through a full range of motion, increase their heart rate, circulate blood throughout the muscles and joints, things like that. The whole purpose of a warm up. And so, in fall camp, we did metabolic conditioning, and so we had like battle ropes and med balls and jump ropes and bear crawl stations and stuff like that, where we would work for like 20 seconds on and take about 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off. And so we had already had like a taste of that. And I thought to myself, what do we do that as part of the warm up? So the football coach had already seen that circuit and saw the benefit of, hey, instead of bringing the guys into the weight room or right after the first football practice, having them condition, let's put them in a position where like, hey, you can go as fast as you can or as slow as you want, but you got to keep moving for 20 seconds. And it's just different things where, the skill guys can get away with running gassers because they're skilled. They run. It's the big guys that struggle. But then maybe you do some type of like bear crawl or something, or med ball slam or some type of ropes where now all of a sudden the bigs have a little more advantage because they're bigger and they're stronger. And now the skills are kind of struggling. And so he had seen all of those things, and I explained those things to him and the purpose of doing it. So I instantly built in the trust to do something that a lot of people would consider as radical. So instead of getting to the stadium and going through the, ankle pulls and knee hugs and quad pulls and lunge and twist and all that's great stuff. Instead of doing that, I figured out, hey, how can we get them to warm up all of those different muscles? Not even having to tell them, but like just getting them to do it, even if they don't do it to the best of their ability. So, you look at our rotation, it's like everything is 15 reps and it's 2 sets. So if me and you are partners, I do my 15 reps, I give you the equipment, you do your 15 reps, you give it back to me, I do my 15, so on and so forth. So we do 2 sets of 15, and I give them roughly 90 seconds. So now if I'm doing band pull aparts, I can't just go through the motion and have a full long conversation about my day. I got to move with a sense of purpose because I got to do my 15, but then I got to give you the equipment to do your 15. So now you get guys moving. And let's say, they're not doing the band pull apart exactly how you want them to do it, right? Where, hey, that band should be even with the eyes. When you pull it, it should touch the top of your chest. Let's say they're just pulling it apart and it's bouncing between their nose and their chin. That's okay because they're still rotating those scaps, right? They're still getting that shoulder mobility in there and activating and circulating blood throughout that shoulder joint. So you're still getting what you want out of it, right? And then we'd also have rotational med ball slams where now they're kind of throwing a little bit of weight around, rapid fire, the heart rate's getting up. Now we got guys that, their heart rate's getting in the hundreds and during a warm up, whereas before it may have never went over 80, and so we're doing our rotational med ball slams. We got, our mini bands, or we're doing lateral band walks on the field, just to activate the glutes and the hip flexors. And then we're doing our jump rope simply because, hey, we want to get heart rates up, right? Just talked about last time the kids moved around was the Thursday before a game around 5 p.m. And here it is, 5 p.m. the next day. And, they haven't moved since then. So we throw the jump ropes in there. And then the last one is the kettlebell swings, right? That's our hip hinge. That's our glute hamstring activator, but then also shoulders. And then as we progressed each week, the guys learn like, hey, I'm knocking out my kettlebell swings in 45 seconds, me and my partner, or maybe a minute. I still got 30 seconds. So I'm going to pick the kettlebell up and, maybe do some type of like shoulder mobility or some upright rows. So then you get guys that are like, maybe they're not doing 2 sets of 15. Maybe they're doing one set of 15, but it's probably more work than they would have done if they would have went through your traditional warm up. And so I presented that idea to the football coach. We practiced it in the weight room. We had a lift. I basically set the weight room up like the field would be. So everything is in sequential order. I gave them 90 seconds. They did it. And then our very first game, I got a trunk from one of the athletic trainers. Shout out Lawson and Potter. They hooked me up with a nice little trailer, and I put all the med balls, kettlebells, all my fun stuff in there. And then we got the ball boys to load it up on the truck, and they put it out on the field for me. And so our warm up is kind of lengthy, but from 5. So whenever we get to the stadium, you're talking about from 5 to 5:10. I have my 10 minutes to warm them up. I normally get it done at 8. So we do that, and then they split up offense, defense, just kind of walk through, go through some stuff. They send the kids in for about 15 minutes. Then they bring them back out with their pants and stuff on, and that's kind of like their fun time where they can throw the football around, listen to music, run routes, whatever, have a good time. And then they send them back in, and then that's when they bring them back out in waves where they bring like your specialists and your returners, and they'll kick field goals and punt and catch and return punts and stuff. And then they'll bring out the next group of skill guys. So then they'll start like lining up, running routes and stuff with the offensive guys. Defensive guys will work like, one-on-ones and things like that. And then the last wave is like your O-line, D-line, your bigs. They come out, and then we do what's called like quick cow, which is kind of like our, our energy booster or whatever. And, we go through, breaking up in lines, and our line leaders call out different calisthenic exercises, and they go through it. And so that's what we kind of do to get the juices flowing. And then we go and the team, and then after the team, we kick some field goals. We head inside with about 10 minutes left. And so it's a lengthy process as far as like our pregame routine, but I appreciate it because I just think about the kids. Like, these kids can't be warmed up and ready to go. And like I told my football coach, I'm like, you don't want your stud running back running full speed or activating his muscles at maximum effort when he's getting his first carry, which might be 4 or 5, 6 minutes into the first quarter, right? You're talking about kickoff is at 7. If we start on defense and, they work the field and the game's on TV and there's TV timeouts, you're talking about from 7. We may not get on the field till 7:12, 7:15, and we got to the stadium at 4:30. So from 4:30 to 7:15, you have yet to run full speed, activate that muscle, activate your muscle groups, your hamstrings, things like that. You haven't activated that in that time because you're going through this, monotonous warm up that you're used to going through. Well, at least with this circuit, your heart rate has gotten up. Your heart rate's hit 110, 120 from the kettlebell swings or the jump rope or whatever. Whereas your walk through, you're jogging through your route full speed. You might catch it, you might drop it, whatever. It's a walkthrough. It's kind of the slow preparation leading up to the game. But then, like I said, there's no guarantee that, okay, we're on defense. Well, you may not touch the field for another 10, 12 minutes. I mean, I've been in games where game starts at 7 and it's on TV, and I look up and, we're just now going into halftime, and I get inside and it's 8:05, and I'm like, we just took an hour for one half of football, of high school football, but TV timeouts and stuff like that. So it makes the game longer. So you just got to think about, are you prepared to go out and compete at a high level? And then, if you're not, what can we do? Because if you're not physically prepared to go out and compete at a high level, I don't need you trying to figure that out when you get that first carry, or you got to go make that lead block, or you got to fill the hole and make a tackle. Like we got to know that, like, hey, this isn't feeling good, or I don't feel A1 in pregame, not in the first series, and then we give up a touchdown because you weren't clicking on all cylinders, and then we lose by a touchdown because we had essentially a weak link in there that couldn't get the job done. And so that's pretty much it, man, in a nutshell. Like I said, shout out to Coach Irvin. I know with football coaches, they're very routine in a lot of the things that they do, and people in general don't like change. But I know something that, if you look at, I mean, my head coach has been coaching for 20 plus years, and he's never done anything like this. So I can't even imagine if somebody came to me with like a new piece of equipment and is like, hey, forget the barbell, you need this. This is going to get you stronger. And it's like, I can see how that'd be tough to like give up something that's so traditional and routine. And so, shout out to Coach Irvin and the whole VMHS football coaching staff for letting me rock and to do my warm up. And the kids received it well, and it made them kind of feel good because it was like we're out here slamming med balls and stuff around, and guys are doing like yoga on the sideline. Like nothing against it, but I think for every team that came out there and did like the partner stretch, I'm pretty sure we whooped those guys. Not saying it had anything to do with like the warm up by no means, but it was just like it's just a mentality, right? If your team comes in, they're fired up, before kickoff, you probably have a good chance. Versus if your team's like sleepwalking out there to go, break through the tunnel, it's like it's gonna be a long game for y'all. So it definitely woke us up, I would say, and had guys on that right level and right mind state to go out and compete.
Now, I mean, yeah, I mean, and you also kind of mentioned there the change part is you're talking about a sport that is about as anti-change as humanly possible. And I mean, let's be honest, football coaches are creatures of habit and tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know why the tradition exists, but we still do it. Like it just,
For sure.
I mean, we are probably the slowest to change. I mean, I listen to strength coaches all the time, and you listen to the NFL, it's like their strength and speed development stuff is 15 years behind college and high schools. I mean,
Yeah.
and you wonder why you have an Achilles tear every week. Um, but that's a whole another issue. Two other questions I want to hit on because, like I said, I mean, we could go hours just off of simple questions. Is one of the other things I saw. It was oh god, I wrote it down. I know I did. I mean, you were talking on one of your tweets about like flexibility and
Mm-hmm.
mobility. I think you the T spine stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and, and that's a big area for me right now because I have some linemen that are big boys that can move some weight, but they're not they need to be able to move better. And that's been one of my
Yeah.
focus off season. So what are you doing to make just general high school kids, whether they're
Mm-hmm.
off the lineman or other kids, move, be flexible, be able to move better on a day-to-day basis? Like I said, I saw the T spine stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, excuse me. So that came from, undergrad, I majored in physical therapy. And so I knew I wanted to work with like people, athletes more specifically. And so that's where that was inspired from. And just picking up stuff from when I was hurt, stuff from when I, played, went to physical therapy, worked as a PT technician. And so just different things, mobility I've picked up. And I just always felt like, from a football player standpoint, like if that kid doesn't physically feel good, he's probably mentally not going to feel good and he's probably not going to play at a high level. Sometimes you just got to trick a kid. Like a kid can be, all bandaged up, all casted up, but if mentally he feels like he's going to go up there and like F some stuff up, then like good things are probably going to happen. But if a kid is perfectly fine and mentally they feel like crap, then they're probably not going to go out there and dominate. And so what I do is any type of major squat, press, hinge, or pull, we always try to add in some type of mobility that coincides with that. And one of the biggest ones, excuse me, and I tell my basketball players this all the time. Um, a guy like Ben Simmons in the NBA who had chronic back issues, like it don't matter how big your arms are, doesn't matter how fast you are, doesn't matter how strong you are. If that low back is on fire, nothing else matters. And so I try to place a huge emphasis on mobility with those movements, but especially when we're hinging a lot, whether it's doing like our clean pulls or cleans or our trap bar deadlift, again, heavy hinging, low back recruitment. I try to always implement that T spine rotation and some type of lower thoracic spine mobility because again, if that low back is on fire, nothing else matters. I don't care how many yards you ran for last week, how many sacks you had. Like if your back is tight, your back is tight. And I've seen it firsthand and I've experienced it firsthand where everything is going good and then you bend down for something and that back tenses up and now all of a sudden, it hurts to rotate. Well, it's kind of hard to play football if you can't rotate. It's kind of hard to play football if you can't stabilize your upper body and move your lower body. And so those just for me personally, I always emphasize some type of mobility. One, it helps with the actual movement. So you talk about, doing shin boxes or some type of hip mobility, pairing that with squatting. Well, a lot of times when you look at kids and they squat and they can't get as low as you would like for them, it's because they don't have that hip mobility to push their hips and butt back, to sit their butt down, right? Or, because their heels aren't elevated, they're not able to keep their feet flat. And so they don't have the mobility in their hips. So that transcends downward into their feet. So that's where they, squat on their toes. So if they have poor mobility in certain areas, then you're probably going to get poor movement patterns in others. So if a kid has poor hip mobility, then you're probably going to get a poor squat pattern, right? If a kid has poor thoracic spine mobility, then they're probably not going to hinge or flex or stay neutral very well, right? So it's just different things like that. And I just look at our kids and I look at other kids and I'm like, man, that kid looks great, but he moves like crap, right? That kid, he's strong, he's fast, but every time they go to run the ball, he's the only kid who can't put his hand in the ground because he can't bend enough to put his hand in the ground. So he's got to be in a two. And that just drives me crazy because it's like, yeah, there's talent. That talent can supersede some of those things. But I'm just looking at these athletes and looking at these kids and just thinking to myself, you bench press 300 pounds, but you can't do double digit push-ups, right? Like that to me is a red flag. That's like a kid talking about football. You run great routes, you got a great release, great speed, but you can't catch. It's like, so then nothing else really matters. Like if you don't have mobility and flexibility, because that's where injuries come. Not many people get injured because they were hyper mobile and super flexible. I don't think nobody has been. So if you're not mobile and you're not flexible, then you're susceptible for injury. And football is a collision game, and certain positions collide a lot more than others. And being a former college fullback, I played right behind O linemen. There's so many times where guys have their foot planted in the ground and somebody gets rolled up in the back of their leg, or somebody falls into their knee or something like that. Those guys, if they're mobile and more flexible, stand a lot better chance than guys who are just strong, right? Yeah, that guy, he squats 600 pounds, had somebody hyperextended his knee, right? All that strength might have prevented a tear, but if we can keep that guy squatting at 600 and improve his mobility in his hips and his ankles and his low back, then maybe we help him out even more, right? So I don't think strength and mobility and all is the end all be all, but I think it gives you a chance. It's like taking a vaccine, right? Like, not saying the vaccine is going to prevent you 1,000% or 100% from getting sick, but at least if you do get sick, it's not as contagious, or you don't have as many symptoms or whatever the case may be. And so the mobility has been huge, and it makes the kids feel good. I mean, the misconception about the weight room is that we're coming in here to grind. I don't. I'm not the strength coach that's going to come in here and like, hey, we got yoga going on, get some mats out, turn the. I'm never going to be that guy. There's a time and a place for it, but if we're coming in to train, we're coming in to train. But as far as like guys coming in to train with me, I am going to always implement that mobility because, like I said, it makes them feel good, and it's to promote range of motion, full range of motion for the actual core exercises. And sometimes the guys just appreciate it, like, hey guys, you gotta throw a little sauce on it. Hey guys, I took this exercise out to put in an extra mobility for you guys so we can take care of those shoulders, right? We may not even be really trying to take care of the shoulders. It may just be something that, hey, we haven't been doing a lot of shoulder mobility. Let's throw some more stuff back in there. And then all of a sudden the kids take it and they're like, oh my gosh, Coach Croc cares about us. He took out dumbbell bench press and put in face pulls instead, or he put in, internal, external rotation instead with the bands. Like, oh my gosh. And it's like, no, I just felt like we've been hitting a lot these past couple of weeks, and I wanted to take some tension off the shoulders. So instead of pressing, we'll do some type of upper pull mobility or whatever. So that's just something that I've been trying to do. And I get on the internet, whether it's Instagram or social, Twitter, whatever, and I see people's mobility exercise and I screenshot them or screen record them. And then when I get tired of one particular, thoracic mobility, I'll implement another one because it does get boring. But then it's like with anything, like as a football coach, as an O-line coach, you're not gonna not teach your kick step just because they're bored of doing kick steps. Like it's a foundational, or just getting you set in your 3-point stance and loading the weight up on your hand, or a certain part of your foot. Like you're not going to say, hey, I know y'all are tired of doing this, but and it's week 11, but we're just not going to work on that. Like, no, we're still going to work on it whether you like it or not. You might as well just get good at it, because it's not going anywhere. So
All right, and I mean, my last question is, and something we kind of talked about beforehand and messaging is you're in the process of starting your own podcast. I think you've filmed at
mhm.
least one episode already.
Yes, sir.
Kind of for people listening, what is it about? I'm going to assume strength training, but two, um, where can they find it, and kind of what do you kind of got planned there, Coach?
Yeah. So I'm thankful to be on your podcast today. I've been on a couple of podcasts in the past, and I've had people DM me and inquire about some things that I've said, just like we're doing today. Hey, I saw you post this on social media. I wanted to ask you questions about it. Like, I didn't obtain all this knowledge and information on my own, so who am I to withhold it? So if I have an opportunity to share, then like by all means. And so I just, recently the past couple of years, I've been that guy that's like, oh, this is a great idea, or I want to try this, and then like that's all it is. It's just something in my notes app right on my phone. And then, last year, or actually, I keep saying last year. It was this year in May, but I started planning for it last year. Um, I hosted my own sport performance clinic where I brought in, collegiate coaches to come speak, high school coaches, an athletic trainer, a dietitian, and for the longest time, I'm like, man, we should have a San Antonio sport performance clinic. And so said, screw it, I just did it. And so this is something else that was on the docket as far as, ideas and just meeting with other coaches. And, the concept and the basis of this podcast is, we can talk about X's and O's and things like that, but I want to talk about more of like the hot takes in strength and conditioning and, talk about if we're at the coaches social or something and we're out at the bar, like I want those conversations to be had on microphone, on camera, because those to me, I've always had great conversation just sitting at the coaching social and just talking about like, hey man, I really got this one coach that I can't stand. Like, how do you handle dealing with that person, right? There's so many great podcasts out there, especially about strength and conditioning, and they deal with a lot of like the X's and O's. With like, one of the topics on the podcast, for episode 1, I said, hey, who's got bigger egos, a head strength coach or a football coach, right? Depending on who you ask, man, you might get a different answer, and depending on where you're at, like you think Texas football, and one of the analogies, I gave, I'm like, you don't think Nick Saban doesn't have a little bit of an ego? I was like, when you think about it, some of the greatest coaches to ever coach, no matter what sport, got a little bit of ego. I'm from San Antonio, okay? We got the Spurs out here. You mean to tell me Greg Popovich ain't got a little bit of ego about himself? Of course he does. So like those are the things that I wanted to talk about and kind of put on record, because I know that, all the things that I've talked about in the past on the podcast, people have said like, hey, or like you did, hey, I saw this and I just wanted more information. I want to have a conversation. I didn't want to go the typical route. Hey, can you send me your workout on this? Or can you just send me this? Like, hey, let's ask questions about it. Let me hear you explain. Let me get the background of how this even came to fruition, right? The fact that I was able to, take this job and have the endorsement from my coach day one ultimately allowed me to do this. The fact that I was able to change up how we did our fall camp conditioning allowed me to do this warm up. So it wasn't just a, hey, I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see this guy doing something that a lot of people would consider to be radical. There's a lot more to it that, meets the eye. And so I'm glad to have opportunities like this. And so, yeah, the podcast right now, so it's a show. It'll eventually be on Spotify. I'm a one man team, man. Just the beauty of YouTube and Google, just figuring out from what podcast equipment to get, all the way to like how to hook it up, how to record it. Like I've gotten it done, and I'm dropping the first episode tomorrow. It'll be on YouTube. Got a little weight room intro, kind of like MTV Cribs, man. And then we go into the actual sit down podcast. So it's about an hour and 40. I might cut some things out, but it's like, the intent, and this guy that I interviewed, we work in the same district and we always have like great thought-provoking conversations. And so the intent was to make it like an hour show. And then after I finish, hitting record, I sit down, I look, and it's sitting there like an hour and 32. And I'm like, man, we got a lot of good stuff. So first, season one of a show is always long, right? The pilot, it's always long. And so yeah, you can check it out on YouTube at the Croc Show, right? Go figure. And ironic enough, I think probably about 5 years ago, I just started getting back active on social media and Twitter and stuff. And my Twitter handle was like Croc_2 or something like that. It's pretty generic. And I was like, I need to like change it to like Coach Croc. And I think Coach Croc wasn't available. And then, they give you some like random numbers. It's like Coach Croc 26184. I'm like, nah. And then I was like, what about the Croc Show? Because I was like, I like to post hot takes and just thought provoking stuff. I used to argue with people back on social media. I gave that up. And so I was like, I'll just call it the Croc Show. And I was like, one day if I build a brand or something like that, I got a nice catchy name. And then here I am years later, like, hey, what am I going to call this high school strength and conditioning podcast? What am I going to call it? I'm like, the Croc Show, duh. Like, I already got the Twitter handle for it. I already got the YouTube channel for it. So YouTube, the Croc Show, episode 1 comes out December 22nd. A lot of great stuff. And then, the goal is to maybe one day get out there to Ohio or somewhere, get out, take this thing on the road. Right now it's Texas, and I probably got about 15 coaches on my list, ranging from all over, from Houston to Dallas to Austin to South Texas, Laredo, the Valley, Corpus. So like I got, about a dozen coaches I can sit down and interview over the next 6 months. But if you see this thing blow up, man, just remember to pull this clip up, man. I'll be going all across the country, sitting down with all sorts of coaches and stuff. And I might do a college edition. One of my guys, shout out to Zach Zillner. He's the head strength coach for University of Texas women's basketball. And so I told him, like, hey, if I do a college edition, man, I got to come up there and sit down with you. He was like, let's do it. So I might do season 1 might do high school. Season 2 might be college. Season 3 might be across the country. I don't know, man. It's one of those deals where, sometimes you get an idea and, I think I saw a meme years ago. I don't know how true it is. It was an Elon Musk meme, but it was like, if you have a 10-year plan, you should take the 10-year plan and try to do everything in that 10-year plan in 10 months and then see how far you got, because you would have accomplished more in 10 months than you would have over the course of 10 years. And it's like, yeah, when you think about how people procrastinate and how life happens and things happen, it's like if I talk about doing a podcast in, December of 2022, and I'm just now dropping episode 1 December of 2023, it's like there was a lot of time in that I didn't do anything that I could have been doing towards this podcast. And I finally put my head down in this past 2 months and went to work and knocked it out. So episode 1 dropping tomorrow, man. And hopefully I can get a nice following and put some good content out there. And definitely excited to check this out. It's weird. I don't know how often you listen to your podcast after you record them, but it's kind of interesting. You go back and you're like, why did I say that? Oh, I should have said this. And you're like, it's too late now. Like that ship has sailed now. Like, like what you wanted to say is too late. So I've definitely been tweaking it and editing it, and I'll probably upload it to YouTube this evening, so that way it'd be ready to promote and stuff tomorrow. So yeah, YouTube, The Croc Show, social media, The Croc Show, Patriot S&C. That's what I put on my TikToks. I'd like to do training videos, highlight the kids. I still don't know how to use TikTok, and I'm aging myself, but the kids love it. And hey, if I pull the camera out and that technique and everything cleans up quick, so I like to pull it out and film the kids training hard and everything, because it definitely helps me and coaching them up in their technique and stuff. So
Yeah. Now, coaches, give Coach a follow on Twitter and then check out his podcast, whether it be on Spotify or on YouTube. Probably about, I don't know, 2 to 4 weeks from the episode debut, and that this will come out somewhere in that range. And then
Okay,
I get this edited. I got mass editing to do next week after I get the last of these filmed. And like I said, check Coach out. I think there's some good conversation there. Like I said, I enjoyed that. To answer his question, I don't listen back to mine very often because I just hate the sound of my own voice
Mhm.
after I get done editing
That's
it. So,
okay. It's not just me. Then I'm like,
oh
oh,
no,
who's this
God,
guy talking? It's like that's you. That's what you sound like, man.
I just tried to pull up on my podcast the other day and I could just hear my voice. I'm just like, turn it off. No, just I can't. It's just I don't want to hear. I'm too monotone. Um,
Yep,
but yeah, no, I've re-listened a couple, but no, most of the time I just skip through me talking because I don't really care what I said. It's usually not thought provoking. It's usually the other person. My technique is very simple, and I've got compliments on it from a buddy of mine. Is I ask direct, simple questions and let my guests talk, and that's
for
I have
sure.
found to be my best technique. But everybody's different. I mean, like Coach Vass, who's a whole different level, um, is like a PhD in football. I mean, he's got a
Hmm.
lot deeper, thought-provoking questions, and it works for him. Everybody's got to figure out what works for them. So, coaches, like I said, like, share, subscribe. Check out Coach. Check out his podcast. Check out his Twitter because, like it's X, whatever you want to call it nowadays, because he posts stuff frequently. Some good stuff. Check our sponsor, Coachpad. Otherwise, that's in our episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.